Hey guys, this is Pedro back with another interview, this time covering VCT Americas Stage 1 for 2025 for playoffs. My guest at this time is Mike's, the head coach of NRG, coming off of their match against 100 Thieves, in which they came out on the losing end, thus subsequently ending their run in playoffs. And so, Mike's, thank you so much, really do appreciate it. And also, commiserations on the elimination. I mean, plenty of things to cover for today, but first and foremost, I want to ask you just sort of what's going through your mind coming out of that match.
Uh, Definitely a rough one overall. Not really even thinking about like the whole group stage performance, just kind of how we have transformed in the past few weeks and how new or like how good I knew we could play going into this game. Um, we felt very confident yesterday. We basically predicted the veto was going to play out this way, and we were like very happy with the veto. So it's not like we were caught off guard there by anything. We've also scrimmed 100 Thieves a bunch this year because they were in the opposite group from us. So we have like countless reps against them on these maps. Um, and just seeing some of the rounds kind of break down the way they did is definitely rough considering all those factors.
I mean, for sure. I mean, it was one in which it kind of feels like, in your mind, I don't want to like put words into your mouth, but like, it feels like you guys could have done much better compared to what you guys, had in terms of potential, right? You feel like the team should have done better.
Yeah, I mean, I think people will kind of like scoff at us or whatever for thinking that we can be a good team, but I think we all know the level that we can play to. Uh, like for example, like the Lev game, map two, how we started off versus 100 Thieves, even like elements of like Fracture. I thought there was going to be times where we were just going to run away with rounds, and I feel like we kind of just beat ourselves in a way, just mostly because of the fact when it's you've scrimmed a team so much and they've played these maps so much that we feel like we should be very comfortable playing against it, because it's not like some of these other group stage matches. It is a bit harder when you go in and it's like you play a map for the first time against like a comp you've never seen and you don't know how that team fully plays. But it's definitely more frustrating when we've scrimmed them countless times this year, especially on like Fracture. So
I mean, well, since you kind of mentioned that map right then and there, I want to segue into that aspect. Given the team's mindset coming into today and the past countless reps that you guys had with that team on that map and also other maps, what do you think just made it different for this squad when it comes to playing in this official server today? To start off the series, what do you think was the biggest challenge in map one from your point of view?
yeah, so I think obviously 100 Thieves, like they have the chamber and then Neon, and they do a really good job of like setting up the round defensively around those two, like pushing and pulling and making you run into the opper. And if you don't run into the opper, there's a bunch of people fighting you with a bunch of util. I think the issue for us was more at the start of rounds. We didn't always have like the best ideas in the moment. Once they did something, like they would do something, and we didn't really always react in the best way. But if we made it past the early rounds and actually lived our mid rounds, I think the ideas were like very, very good. But the issue is you can go back and watch all the rounds on our attack where sorry the round they just kind of run us down in arcade B main. And when we're all dead in the first 10 seconds, it's pretty hard to have an idea at that point. So definitely think in the early rounds we weren't as cautious as we could have been, knowing how they play.
And then, like with that said, though, it kind of felt like you guys were able to completely rectify map one when map two was starting, and you guys had that 8-4 opening half on defense side in Haven. So it kind of looked like this team was going to force the third map onto Icebox, and maybe who knows what will happen on that aspect. But things started to turn again for 100 Thieves once they won those pistols in defensive side on that second half, and then kind of snowballed from that point onwards. Two-part question. what did you kind of say to the team from map 1 to map 2, in between, to sort of like have them be in a much more comfortable headspace? And also, like, the second part is kind of similar to the previous question: what went wrong in the second half?
Yeah, so something that we talked about in between maps, Sam brought it up, which was a really good point, which is obviously on Fracture, there's going to be a lot of times where on attack, you're going to be separated. So, like, two people B main, three people arcade. And there's a lot of times where one of the sides was getting stalled or something weird was happening to them, but people weren't calming like what needed to happen as much. And I think that kind of slowed down the rounds a lot. Whether if we actually lived past their first aggression, we just kind of got stalled out on our plan, which made things feel like a lot worse. So that was kind of the emphasis. Though in the mid to late rounds, all of our ideas were very good. Even on the first map, like there's a lot of rounds where it's like, as long as we lived and we were able to do something as a team in the mid to late round, we felt much more comfortable versus them. We just knew since they're like a very aggressive team that you have to actually make it past the first 20, 30 seconds of the round without getting ran down. And then Haven, I mean, there's a few rounds that we messed up just in terms of people maybe being a little too excited after we got a kill. There's two rounds I remember. There's a round where Busio had the Cypher Cam tag in garage and we all spammed him, but then we sped up C. And then there's another round where we killed Asna at A long, and then we sped up again, which we won that round, but it was still kind of sloppy. So I think that was kind of the breakdown, but I think it falls on me overall for the second half because having an 8-4 lead on defense, they did basically everything I wanted of them for that half. Everything was perfect. They calmed like all the ideas and setups that we wanted to do. Um, and then we were in a really good position where you got to save both timeouts then for second half, and I wasn't able to make an adjustment that really had much of an impact to close out the game.
Interesting point that you brought up with the timeouts. I believe you called one down like early on in the second half on Haven, and I believe the second one you put it in right when 100 Thieves was in a match point, right? Like when they were 12-1 up, and you call that timeout just to sort of like give them like the headspace as to like what you want the team to do. Just want to ask you about like that. Why couldn't you like call a timeout much more sooner? Just so like you can kind of stop the bleeding.
Yeah, so sometimes I think it's a bit different with timeouts because I'm fortunate to have FNS on my team where there's a lot of times where I wanna call a timeout. Like, for example, we went down 5-0, but when we were down 3-0, even on our Haven, all of the ideas that he was saying for how to play the round, I agreed with. So in my mind, it's
Mm.
like, I agree with the idea, and everyone seems in line with the idea. No one's, like, panicking. So let's just do it and then not waste a timeout, and then, like, after, if that idea still isn't working, then I'll try to figure something else out. And I don't really feel like the start of round ideas were bad on Haven. I thought all of them made sense and they're really good. I think again it goes back to like some of the rounds where we get a kill, we speed up too fast, we're not like fully playing together, stuff like that kind of hurt us more than the early rounds. So it was a bit different than Fracture where the early rounds were hurting us more. So that's kind of the philosophy with like timeouts for me is I'm not really gonna call one if they're saying exactly what I want to do already, unless I feel like people are too nervous or not on the same page. But I feel like that's usually not an issue with our team.
Okay, definitely understand it. Appreciate the insight on that. One more question. Given that you guys see your stage 1 journey finish in the lower bracket, finishing with in the 7th, 8th place, I believe. How do you kind of look back on NRG's performance and also your inclusion with all of the things that went down to this team? And yeah, like how do you kind of look back on it, and what do you feel the team has to focus on for stage 2?
Um, so definitely not happy overall with the stage. I do think these last two matches have made me feel better, albeit one of them being a loss today. Then the G2 MIBR losing streak we went on, where we barely got probably like, I don't know, 16 rounds between like 4 maps, which is like pretty horrible. But those 2 weeks really made me realize that um, whatever system or like idea we had in place wasn't working. People weren't comfortable, people weren't as confident. Whereas I feel like now, that's not the case between these last 2 series. I feel like people are much more comfortable in like the way they can play the game, um, and like the way we play the game as a team. It's just some of these like situations that we end up, we're not as well versed in as we should be, or sometimes we don't um, make like the best fundamental decision that we could. I think again, like I can go back to Fracture and say like the way we played like the early rounds it's a little bit more rough, and then Haven is more like the late rounds. But overall, I feel like we've made a lot of progress in the past 2.5 to 3 weeks. Uh, Obviously, like a lot of people can see that we changed a lot of our comps to like change to like our identity as well. But yeah, it's definitely rough overall, just because you come into a team mid-year and you're trying to figure out like what works, what doesn't, what needs to change. New player as well, so you're trying to figure out like what works for him. So I think that's definitely been like my toughest experience in esports because most of the time I've joined teams, or at least that 100 Thieves, I was there for 2.5, 3 years, so it was pretty consistent throughout all the off seasons. So I feel like it's definitely been a big learning curve because you kind of have to hit the ground running for any group stage. Because once the group stage starts, it's not like you're going to get another month to kind of adjust things. It's like, okay, we lost this week. What needs to change for next week? This opponent plays completely differently. There's just a lot of things in motion that you have to account for.
And well, at the very least, you guys finally have stage one finished up, and now you can kind of take the biggest lessons and use that for stage two, and obviously come into that stage as a much better team, and hopefully that will be the case for you yourself and the rest of NRG. And that said, I'm gonna wrap up the interview right here. Mike's really do appreciate the opportunity for this interview, answering all of the questions and everything else of the like. Really do appreciate that. Sorry for the loss once again, and of course, gotta give you the best of luck for the journey ahead into stage two.
Thank you. Appreciate it.